I'd like to welcome you to the Republic of Work Lunch and Learn. Thank you very much for attending. The Lunch and Learns in Republic of Work, they happen every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. And there's a variety of topics to suit all sorts of businesses. So log in and have a look during lunchtime, anytime you get a chance. And if you look on the Republic of Work website, republicofwork.com, you look at the What's On section there and you'll see some more information about what's coming up. So today I'm going to talk to you about time management, and you might see me from time to time looking down at my notes because I want to make sure I don't forget much. I'm going to talk for maybe 20 or 25 minutes around about that, and then I'd be happy to take any questions afterwards. And you can also contact me afterwards if you like. I have contact numbers up here. I have my mobile number, 087-809-2885, and my email address, tom@etpint.com. And that's the email address that I use with a partner called ETP, who I do all my project management training with. So who am I anyway? I am from Galway originally, and I moved to Cork 40 years ago and spent 20 of those 40 years in Apple Computer. And I left Apple around 2000, 2001, and I set up my own business doing project management training, doing projects themselves, doing a bit of consultancy. And I've basically worked on my own for 20 years as a sole trader, but I've partnered with different people from time to time. And I give a lot of project management courses, and part of those courses includes time management. And what I'm going to be doing here today, it's not a time management course. It's kind of a stream of consciousness of all the things that I've learned about time and what I think about time, how I handle time. And I'm going to talk to you about the nature of time. I'm then going to talk to you, how do you calculate your available time and how do you manage that time? And thirdly, how do you control your time? And then finally, I'm just going to talk about extreme time management. And extreme time management is something that I learned from a man called Fergus O'Connell, and Fergus runs ETP, the company I do my project management training with. And I learned that from him, and it is pretty extreme how he manages it. So first of all, the nature of time. How many times have you heard people saying, I just don't have the time for it? I mean, for me, I often hear people saying, Tom, I'd love to go to your time management course, but I don't have time. It's kind of ironic. Time is actually the most predictable, the most controllable resource that we've got. It's the most predictable, the most controllable. The sun comes up every morning, wherever you are in the world. It goes down every night, and is likely to do so for a long time to come. However, time is different. When I do workshops in real life with us all in the same room, I usually take out a €5 note. Now, it's a sign of the times. This is actually a €50 note. I have no €5 notes anymore, and I've had this on my wallet since the start of lockdown because I can't spend it because everyone is taking contactless. But usually I take out €5, and then I say to the room, would somebody like to lend me a fiver, please? And there's a couple of reactions I get to that. And reaction from some people is they take a sudden interest in their shoes or they look out the window. But some people, quite a few people, sort of root in their bags or in their pockets and they hold out a fiver. And I take that €5 note from somebody at the very start of the workshop. And the workshop goes on all day. And I say nothing more about it for the whole day. And during the day, I make, maybe one or two comments about it, but the person is always a little bit concerned, will I get my €5 back? And actually they know though, they know for sure that they will get that €5 back. They're not entirely sure, but I give it back to them at the end of the day. That's money, but time, you give your time to somebody, you will not get it back. You cannot get your time back. So the best way to control your time is don't give it away in the first place. And that's kind of the beginning and the end of the time management course that I deliver. That's that single message. You will not get it back. So don't give it away. Don't give it away easily. Don't give it away without thinking about it. It is your time. It's not somebody else's time, it's your time. And there's a man called Vitaly Golom, I think is how he's pronounced. I heard him speaking at an IT at Cork seminar in Páirc Uí Chaoimh a couple of years ago. And he had a brilliant definition of time. His definition was, time is a non-refundable limited resource. So that's the nature of time. You won't get it back. Think about that every time you're tempted to give it away. In that regard, I have a kind of a saying, and I learned this when I was a little kid. And my saying is, there's no such thing as 10 minutes. And where I came up with that is my mother used to bring me shopping every week. And on our way home from shopping, she'd call into her sister for a chat. And she'd say to me, will you wait in the car, Tom? I'll only be 10 minutes. And I would wait in the car and it would be a lot longer than 10 minutes. So there's no such thing as 10 minutes. If somebody wants 10 minutes of your time, you're hardly into the conversation before 10 minutes is up. On that point, there was a survey done in California a couple of years back. And what they surveyed was the effect of interruptions on us. When we're interrupted, what happens? And most of us these days, we're in a cerebral type of activity. We're knowledge workers. We're working with our heads, as well as our hands, obviously, but we're working with our heads. And when you're engaged in cerebral type activities, when you're trying to figure something out, when you're working on something that requires your brain power, that requires your focus, your concentration, and when somebody interrupts you, when they interrupt you for any reason, for any length of time, it takes you, when you return to the task that you had at hand, it takes you about 27 minutes on average to get back to the speed you were at, to get back focused, to get back to achieving as much as you were achieving before the interruption. So one of the things to remember is, if somebody interrupts you once, that's a half an hour. If somebody interrupts you later on in the afternoon, that's another half an hour. 2 little interruptions in the day and you've lost an hour. And that's the nature of time. So how do we calculate our available time? So let me see if I can find my marker here. That's our week. That's the amount of time we have in a week. How many hours, if anybody would care to do a calculation, how many hours are there in a week? Type it into the chat to tell me how many hours there are in a week. I'm just looking at the chat here to see, is anyone typing in? Nobody so far. 168, 168. 2 correct answers. 168. 168 hours in a week. An awful lot of time. When I ask this question in my time management workshop, people say 40 hours. 40 hours is only the work part of your time. So you divide your time into 4 things. The first thing people usually say is work. We're all working. You have to work. 4 things that you have to do. However, what I would always start off with is this. I don't know if you can read my flip chart, but it says sleep. Sleep is the most important part of your week. If you're not getting sleep, you cannot do anything well. So you've got to make sure that you're getting sleep and that you give the right amount of time to sleep. About between 6 and 8 hours a night is what they say. And some people that talk to me, especially during the coaching sessions that I have, they say, but Tom, I can't get to sleep. A technique I learned a long time ago, and it needs practice and it doesn't come easy, but it works, is if you're trying to get to sleep and you're worrying about something, you're worrying about something in your life, something in your work, something you have to do tomorrow, something you have not done today, ask yourself the question, I'm here in my bed ready to go to sleep. What can I do about that right now? Right now. And the answer is nothing. So put it out of your head and go to sleep. So you've got to have your sleep, you have your work. But there's two other things that your time really needs to be divided into. Family and friends. Your family and friends. You've got to actively put time into your family and friends. If you don't actively take some of your time every week and say, I am going to spend that with my family, I am going to spend that with my friends, then it might not happen. How often have you met somebody and said, gosh, how many years is it since we've met? Is it 3 years? Is it 10? We really must make an effort. We must meet up more often. The reason we don't is we don't decide in the same way as you decide to get up and go to work, in the same way in work you decide, I'm going to do this for the afternoon. In your private life, decide to spend that time with your family and friends and leave everything work related aside. Turn off your mobile phone. Imagine that. Imagine turning off your mobile phone. The biggest interrupter in the modern world is the mobile phone. And if you look at what happens with mobile phones, it's the same thing as if you were talking to somebody, having a conversation, and their phone rings and they answer it. It's the same thing as if somebody had walked up to both of you, shoved you out of the way, and said, I'm taking over this conversation now because I want to talk to this person. So when you're talking, especially to family and friends, be with them, turn off your mobile phone. What's the worst that can happen? The final section of the quadrant is self. You've got to spend time on yourself, and spending time on yourself means doing something that is not work, doing something that is not to do with your family or friends and all the responsibilities you have there, doing something that is completely for yourself. I met one guy one time and I was asking him what he loves doing. He said, I love doing nothing. So I said, well, take some time in the week and do nothing. You know, do it for yourself, do a hobby. There was a survey, and again, like a lot of surveys, more research is needed. And like a lot of surveys, there's a lot of other surveys that contradict it. But there was a survey that I read many years ago on CEOs in corporate America who retired at the age of 65. And on average, something like 60% of them had actually died. They'd actually expired within 2 years. And the reason that the survey came up with was they had spent every living moment living their job, living their work, being the CEO, and had not developed any hobbies. So when it came to retirement, all of that was gone from their lives. Big chasm, big gap in their lives, and they couldn't fill it, and they kind of, you know, got stressed, and the stress then killed them essentially. And the same person who told us about that, he was a professor in INSEAD over in France that I was lucky enough to get on a management course with. He said, really, you need to develop a hobby. Now, if you want to develop a hobby of any type, that'll give you the same satisfaction as your work, that'll give you the same sense of completeness, that'll give you the same enjoyment, it takes about 10 years to develop the expertise in that hobby. So anybody who doesn't have a hobby, start now. Because when your job stops, or like me, if you only decide to work sort of 3 days a week on average, and you're not working 5, 6, 7 days a week, when that happens, you'll have something else that'll grab your attention, that'll take your attention, that'll give you satisfaction. So start your hobby now. It takes 10 years to build it up. A lot of people, they retire, they take up golf. Golf is one of the most frustrating sports you can ever take. So you need to be in your health to take up golf. You need to have many years ahead of you to get good enough at golf to where you can bear looking at your own shots. So take up a hobby, make sure you put time to yourself. So that's dividing up your day. Now, I mentioned him before, a man called Fergus O'Connell. He runs a company called ETP. I do project management courses for him. He came up with a time management method that I always tell to people, and it's brilliant. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a dance card. Type into chat if you've ever heard of a dance card. Yes or no? I don't see any yeses or nos yet. No, nope, yes, no, 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 mostly no. Well, a dance card goes way back when dances were set up so that a lady going to the dance would have a dance card. And on that dance card would be written the name of each dance. And if you were a man who wanted to dance, you had to go around to all the ladies and ask them, would they put your name beside the dance of your choice or the dance of her choice? And the thing about a dance card is, when a lady's dance card is full, she cannot dance anymore. We're the same in work. When our week is full, we cannot take on any more stuff. How do you know your week is full? Let me turn the flip chart over and show you something I prepared earlier. So that's a very simple dance card. And what it is, meetings, email, travel, training, personal appointments, holidays, project A, project B, whatever it is, what I encourage people to do when they come to my workshops, and what I'm encouraging you to do, take out a page of your book, do it on Excel. I have a very simple Excel thing that I send people sometimes. Write out what are the main activities you're going to be involved in for the next 6 weeks. And make a prediction. And I've started here. Meetings, 10 hours, week 1. Email, how long do I spend on email? 15 hours, put 15 there. Travel, I'm going nowhere next week. Looks like I'm going nowhere for a long time, actually. And so on. And fill out your next 6 weeks. Now, I know we all have a calendar in our iPhone or in our Android phone. I know we have a Google Calendar, we have an Outlook calendar, we have so many calendars. You know, it's actually hard to find a place, but there's nothing to beat a page that you can write down. And I put this on a flip chart in the corner of my office every month. My dance card. I don't call it a dance card because it's a bit embarrassing. I call it my time management card or something like that. And I map out the next 6 weeks and what I expect to spend in terms of hours on each activity. And the crucial thing is this: at the end of week 1, go back to your dance card and write out what you actually spent. And do the same in week 2 and week 3 and week 4 and week 5 and week 6, and learn, how do you manage your own time? How do you plan your own time? How do you divide up your own time? Because we're all different. When it's stuff that I don't like to do, I usually underestimate the amount of time that I need to spend on it. When it's stuff I love doing, I usually allocate more time than it needs. And I have to learn that about myself. And you look back over the last few weeks and you see what you planned versus what you did. And it's kind of a policing check on yourself and the management of your time. And that's what we do. So the third subject, I'm looking down my notes again. How do you control your time? The way to control your time, the way I control my time, the way I think it's best to control your time, is number 1, learn how to say no. Learn how to say no. And how do you say no? How do you say no politely to people? How do you say no to your boss? You can say no if your boss or somebody wants you to do something. You can say no if you can show them something equivalent to your dance card. If you can show them something like, this is my list of activities for the week. This is my list of activities for the next 5 weeks, for the next 6 weeks. And in that context, if you're planning your time, you will be able to plan your interruptions as well, because you'll be able to show to somebody, look, I'm all booked up. And at that time, they might go away. But they might also say, but this is an emergency. The company is depending on you. I messed up myself. I'm sorry, but I need your help. And if you really don't have the time to help somebody, then a best technique is to say very politely, I'd love to be able to help you with your problem, but I don't have the time. So you're recognizing all the time that it's their problem. And there's an old theory about people who hand off jobs to other people. They talk about handing a monkey and putting a monkey on your back. So somebody comes along and metaphorically has a monkey on their back, a task they don't want to have to do. And they try and give it to you. They take the monkey off the back and give it to you. And if you take the monkey and say, I don't want this monkey, you've taken the monkey and they run away. But if you just, you know, I'm not taking your monkey, it's your monkey. So I'd love to be able to help you with your problem, but I don't have the time. And you have the backup to show them, to say, how can you be that busy? Well, this is what I have to do. I call giving yourself time, I call it giving yourself Christmas. I mean, a lot of the world celebrates Christmas, a lot of the world doesn't, but we all know Christmas is a time where people give gifts. So I talked about giving yourself Christmas, giving yourself the gift of time. And how do you do it? You make a list. Make a list. Whatever you make the list on, whether it's a time management software program, whether it's a flip chart, which I love doing, whether it's something like this, a time manager, it's a Filofax that Apple bought for me many years ago and I still have it. Whatever it is, make a list somewhere. Somewhere you have to have a list of everything that you're doing. And check it twice. I know when I make a list at the start of the week and the start of the month, I know I put too much on the list. I always do. I'm optimistic. I put too much on it. So I force myself every Monday and at the start of every month, make my list. Then I go down, and how I cut things out of it is I imagine telling Breed, my wife, what I planned for the week. I imagine that in my head. So Breed, this week I'm going to do these. And I imagine the look she will give me, which is like, you really think you're going to get all of that done this week? And then I cross off some of the things on the list and I make it manageable. And the ones I cross off, I do make sure to carry them over to next week. So every week, week on week, my list always starts with stuff that's carried over from the previous week that either I decided I wasn't able to do or I wasn't actually able to do. Because I still have the habit after all these years, I still put too much on the list and I still end up having things to carry over. The discipline is making sure to carry it over. And then don't let naughty people take your time. Don't be too nice. You know, like we said before, and be honest with yourself. If you think you're optimistic in your scheduling, give yourself more time. If you're pessimistic, give you less. And I said at the outset, you know, time is the most predictable of all and you can't refund it. But there's another thing about time is it changes depending on whether you like doing what you're doing. So imagine 2 minutes. If I stayed silent for 2 minutes in this webinar and I just looked into the camera, everybody on the webinar looking back would be fidgeting and saying, oh God, when is he ever going to talk? What's he doing? This is an awful long time. Is 2 minutes a long time? It is if you're doing something like I just said. It also is if you're waiting for a lift, for an elevator, but it's not if you're running for a bus or for a plane. So 1 hour spent on one thing is different to an hour spent on another thing. If it's something that you like, that you love doing, that you're really good at, you can do it fairly shortly. If it's something you don't like, when you're adding up your time and it's something that you don't like, I would say put in twice the amount of time that you think it'll take you, because you'll spend some of the time getting your head into the right place and, you know, getting stuff prepared and trying to put it off. So that's kind of a control of your time. And then finally, my final point, I'm looking down at my notes here, extreme time management. So what's extreme time management? Sometimes we are extremely busy. And we're so busy that we forget not to take on any other work. And in fact, if you get very busy, an old boss of mine used to say, Tom, I always ask you to do stuff because you're always busy. You know, if you're in a kind of a mode, you can actually do more stuff, but then you overload yourself very quickly. And I see a question here in chat, will there be a Q&A session later? Absolutely. You can, when I finish talking, you can unmute and one at a time, obviously. And you can ask a question or you can email me or text me afterwards. But this man used to say, you know, I ask you to do it, Tom, because you're busy, and you're very busy. But picture this, you have a feeling that you've too much on your plate, you're too busy. Imagine if you got sick. Imagine if you broke your leg. Imagine if you had to go and leave the country or leave the county or leave your town to deal with a family emergency. Imagine that happened right now. you would have to clear off your list. And if you had to decide what are the very key, absolute, necessary, one or two things that I have to do despite this emergency, put them back on your list and let that be your list. A very simple list of only the things you have to do. Why would you put anything else on it? And that's extreme time management. And I learned that also from Fergus Connolly, and he practices it. He actually empties his email inbox every week. And he says, if it's urgent enough, they're going to contact me again next week. I don't do that. That's not the way I do it. But from time to time, I find myself, because none of us is perfect at this art, from time to time, I find myself building up to a point where I'm feeling, you know, my goal is to work 3 days per week on average, so about 24 or 30 hours a week. I find myself getting near the top and getting full. And I find that I have to sit back and do a bit of extreme time management. Do I really need to do that at all? Why am I doing that? If I could only do 2 things, what would those 2 things be? And it's a process. It's an ongoing process. And that, folks, is my stream of consciousness on time management. And I hope that you found it a little bit interesting and maybe got some tips from it. And if anybody has any questions, if you just want to, I think you can raise your hand in the reactions. And if somebody has a question, I can unmute them. If nobody has any questions, that's perfectly fine.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Okay.
Hi, you know the pie you divided for 4 sections for the, work, life, work, sleep, and friends, and you know the 4 things, and yourself.
Yeah.
How do you actually do you have like different proportion or just same? They divided at equal?
That's totally personal. But for sleep, I
okay.
It's totally for sleep. I always allow 8 hours per night, and that leaves you a certain amount of life. It's really totally personal. What I made a personal decision myself, maybe 4 years ago, to compress my work to 3 days per week, because I realized with my wife that we had just about enough money. Our kids were grown up, our mortgage was paid. Why was I working 5 days a week when I didn't need to? Because I tend to get very engrossed in my work when I work. So I squashed my own work life down to 3 days, and it's an effort to keep it to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
I have a question.
Okay, Aruna.
Yeah, so from the time you like have been planning your time, and then you mentioned about the dance card thing. So you put on some specific number of hours for each of the activities that you have, and then after a week, you will just come back, and then or after completing the activity, you will come back and check whether whatever you had estimated is the same as what you spent.
Yeah.
So that's what you meant.
Yes.
So like within obviously we will not be so precise when we start off with that. So like over a period of time we'll become more more accurate in terms of estimating our time. So how much time did it take for you to become like more accurate with respect to that timing of yours?
I work on that, Aruna, every single day of my life.
Okay.
I am much better than I was. And
Okay.
what I have found is, you know, exactly as you said, you get more accurate as you keep doing it. Sometimes I get lazy, like during the summer months, particularly on a day like today. For the month of July, I didn't sit down as I do on the first day of every month and do a proper plan for the month. And I'm suffering for that all through the month of July. So I think the critical thing is do it, keep doing it. If you don't do it, recognize that, oh, I should have done that. Forgive yourself, go back and do it, and just do it. I mean, sometimes literally my family, when they visit, or when they used to be able to visit, or particularly the younger members, they'd kind of laugh at me and say, Tom, you're always doing lists. So I said, yeah, I have to, you know, I live by a list. There are some rare individuals who can keep a list in their heads, but they're very rare. So I would say, do it, keep doing it, keep practicing, you will get better. And if you stop doing it, it won't be automatic.
Yeah, like actually, even I have the habit of preparing the list and then ticking it like when I'm done with it. And so whenever I do that, there's a lot of happiness which comes inside that, yeah, I have done it. However small it may be, like I feel very happy, and then I carry over that list to the next week. So I really felt very nice when you said that. And one more additional question is that, like, often I find that, like, when I make that list, and then as you said, I also keep overloading myself, like I put too many activities, and when I do that, I feel overwhelmed. I feel that there is so much to do, so much to do. So sometimes that overwhelming feeling is it causes too much of stress within. So I mean, how is it for you? How are you managing with that?
Well, when I overload myself, the first thing I do is I decide, what's the thing that's the least important here? What thing can I give up or can I delay? And then when I decide what that is, I go to the person that I made a promise to. Sometimes it's myself because it's a task for myself, but I go to the person that I made a promise to and I say, I'm sorry, I didn't manage my time well this week. I was over optimistic. I won't be able to do that. What does that do for you? I put it on the table as soon as I possibly can. Whether that somebody is my boss, or whether it's a client, or whether it's somebody who's working for me, it doesn't really matter. It's about the respect of, you made a promise to somebody and now it's changed. So as early as possible, when you realize you're overloaded, go talk to the people. And what I almost always find is that people understand that. And if you talk to 3 or 4 people, maybe 3 of them will say, okay, let's reschedule. And the 4th will say, oh no, that gives me a big problem. But at least it's a smaller problem than it started off as.
Yeah, that's a very nice thing. And one last thing, like, what are the activities that you do for yourself which gives you happiness? Yeah, I understand it's very personal, but however, like, I mean, just as an example, I just wanted to ask, like, apart from the hobbies thing, so typically what is that which gives so much of happiness for oneself, wherein we feel that, like, our time is really well spent on ourselves, because generally we don't give too much of time for ourselves. So that is
Yeah.
one area I want you to touch upon.
Well, I think it's really important that if it's for yourself, you find something that you love. You know, I tried to take up golf years ago, but I knew when I was taking it, I don't love it. I really don't love it. So I stopped. I love music. So I started learning to play the mandolin many years ago. And then I had an accident in 2002, I think. And I lost the tips of my fingers. So I had to relearn, which took me about 5 years. And I just love sitting down and playing my mandolin. And then I've started learning guitar last year because I decided, and it was a limiting belief, I decided that I could play the mandolin, but I'd never be able to play the guitar. So I said to myself, I'm good enough at the mandolin. I can bear listening to myself. I can enjoy playing it. I need more of a challenge. So I bought a guitar a few months ago, and I'm now learning the guitar. And I do love it. It is work, and it can be frustrating, but I do love it. So I think it has to be something you love, because if it's a hobby that's going to give you satisfaction, it's going to be work. And if it's work, at least you'll love the result at the end. So music is my passion.
Thank you. And
Okay.
you mentioned 1 or 2 authors' name. Like, I mean, if you could tell me the author name again, about some books or something you mentioned in the beginning, I think.
Yeah, what I'll do is, if you email me at the email address that I put up, it's tom@etpint.com. I'll send you.
Okay.
Up there,
Tom at
Tom at-
etpint.com. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
Tom at etpint.com, and I'll send you. I'm very bad at keeping records of the books that I quote, so I'll look them up and email them to you. No problem.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It was really nice.
Okay. Any other questions, folks?
Hi, Tom. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, yeah. So I have a question regarding, I think, linked to the previous topic and about extreme time management.
Yes.
So I'm also an entrepreneur myself, and I'm trying to be as highly efficient. Also, not only time-wise, but also energy-wise, such as Elon Musk. So I'm obviously pushing boundaries not only for working like 8 hours, but maybe pushing towards 10 hours, etc. But I find that maybe only the first 5 hours, considering some very helpful breaks like switching the left brain and right brain, etc., can fully make myself function. Like those 5 hours are really the hours which I feel like highly productive. I can do the three-person's job. But then later on, my brain gets really tired, and then it requires me to maybe do some housework or do some sports, etc., to relax. So I feel so. I have actually one or two questions. So, what do you think is the most healthy amount of highly productive time, like 100% efficient? Is it can we do like really 8 or 10 hours, or do you think it's really depending on the person, and if our brain is not the same structure as Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, then it's impossible to highly function and perform such a high amount of hours?
Well, I knew Steve Jobs. I met Steve Jobs a few times, and he didn't work 24/7. And there were some days when the guy was incredible. He had an incredible aura about him. I mean, you could feel his energy in a room, even in a room full of people. But I often encountered him around the hallways when he would be having a down day, and you'd hardly recognize him because he'd be almost within himself. So I don't believe there's anybody that works consistently 24/7 or 8 hours. If you can get 5 hours work of really solid work where you're performing at or near your peak, that is fabulous. Because with all the people that I've trained with over the years, and we trained a lot of people in Apple as well. So it's really, I've been 40 years training people, really, when I look at it, God. Of all the people that I've spoken to, the vast majority kind of agree that you have about 5 productive hours in a day. And if you can get 5 productive hours every day, that's huge. And I think what you said earlier was really, really good. When you feel your performance going down, you go and you do something else. That's absolutely brilliant, because when you feel your performance going down, you come back the next day to your task, you're probably going to have to redo some of the stuff that you did. If you were tired, if you were stressed. So yeah, I think 5 hours is the magic number.
Okay, so maybe just to double confirm, would you advise that, because for now my structure is like maybe 5 hours highly productive, and maybe the let's say 3 hours doing some supporting work, right? Supporting my team, etc., mentoring, these kind of more relaxing tasks. And then maybe 2 hours really do some administrative sports or housework. Would you have any, like, would you think there's any part of my current schedule which can change, that can make me even more outstanding as a more higher performance entrepreneur? Or would you think, that's already kind of the top, and there's not much I can change for the moment?
I mean, my personal opinion is 5 hours is fantastic. What you said there, though, I have a comment on what you said, and my comment is, if I picked you up correctly, if you are spending time with other people in your organization or outside, and you're giving them your time, and you're helping them, and you're mentoring them, that is incredibly productive work. That is work. You're sowing the seeds now for people who are going to help you in the future. And by you helping them, if they're in your company, you're making them even more productive. So your personal productivity, 5 hours, if on top of that, you're now helping other people to be productive, I would like to be that productive.
Okay, thanks. Okay, sure. Then because I'm actually sometimes stressed for not only able to work for 8 hours as an entrepreneur, same as a 40-hour work week. But okay, then you give me a much extra confirmation that I'm doing the right way. So thanks.
In my opinion.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, folks?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
The session was amazing, and I have a question. About carryovers. You mentioned carryovers.
Yeah.
And they are important. But a lot of times what happens is when you carry over your jobs, and it gets piled up and it accumulates, and then it also all those carryovers take a major chunk of a fresh day. So how do you deal with it? Because if you give much importance to carryovers, then it affects you the next day. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I have a rule. It's only a personal rule. If I carry over something three times, I don't do it at all.
Okay, that makes much sense. Thank you.
That's my personal rule. And
yeah.
and by the way, I get in trouble sometimes because of that, but that's okay. You kind of have to forgive yourself sometimes as well. But you're dead right, because you'd actually get depressed if you kept all your carryovers all the time, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
There has to be a tool to deal with it.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
Okay. Okay, folks. As I said, feel free to call me or email me at any time with any question, and I hope you all got something out of the session.
Yes, just one question, please.
Okay.
How you deal with the procrastination in this pandemic? So obviously, this is very much like, new ways of working and balancing everything, what you've drawn, so what's your views on that?
The pandemic, like we're all natural. We all have natural styles, and I naturally procrastinate about things that I don't like doing, like my tax returns, or, believe it or not, project planning. If I know I have a lot of planning to do in a project, I procrastinate, because I love when a project is in full swing and we're going at it. And so in the pandemic, I got a bit of advice at the start of the pandemic, because I immediately had to start doing all my work from home. And what the person said to me is, Tom, when you wake up, get out of bed and make your bed and dress as if you're going to the office. And if you have some tasks at the start of the day, pretend you're going to a meeting where you have to account for those tasks. So that's what I kind of do. I get myself into a work frame of mind. And even though I'd much prefer to go out in the garden, I prefer to go walking the dog, I prefer, maybe even to lie on in bed for a little while, I just get out of bed and make myself say, this is the day, I got to do it. If I don't do this, my work is going to suffer. But procrastination, somebody else said to me during the pandemic, Tom, I was going to work on my procrastination, but I put it off for a while. It's one of these things, it's always there. So it's not like you can solve procrastination, but what you can do is you can make yourself aware of the triggers. Like, I can find myself, when my tax returns are due every 2 months, I can find myself thinking up things to do to fill my day, so that I don't have to go and sit down and do my tax returns and go through the receipts. So when I find myself doing that, I just literally talk to myself and I say, Tom, stop it, put on your shirt, get up to the office and do it. That's what I do.
No, that's great. Thank you. And
Okay.
just a second, very brief question. What about the short-term and long-term plan? Like, how to kind of do that in our life? Do we have to keep reviewing it? Because obviously, it's no good if there's a plan, but obviously we're not following it, because obviously different plan have a different direction and how long they can survive or something.
You have to have a plan. I always have, as well as my dance card in the corner and a flip chart, I always have a plan for the month visible in my office. I know, with phones and laptops and everything these days, we don't need to have things, but I think visible, either a board or a flip chart in your office or your place of work, with the key things for that month written on it. And I always have a year plan as well. But by definition, a plan for a year is going to change a lot more than a plan for a month. And a plan for a month is going to change more than a plan for a day. So the thing is, you have to have a plan. Otherwise, you won't know how far off you are from the plan. But it's almost guaranteed that you won't meet that plan. Almost guaranteed, for one reason or another. So the thing is, you start out, beginning of every month, do the monthly plan. Beginning of every year, do the yearly plan. Beginning of every week, do the weekly plan. Carry forward stuff. As Chandra was saying, if you start carrying forward too much, you really ask yourself, do I really even need to do this? If people aren't chasing me for it, or maybe it's not important. Do the odd bit of extreme management. If I broke my leg tomorrow, what would I really need to do before the end of September? That kind of thing. It's a cyclical thing. It's a cycle. You don't just get good at time management. You have to do it every day you get up. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's really
welcome.
Thank
you. Okay.
I have one last question.
Okay.
It's about that 27-minute time which one needs to get back when you're interrupted. So is that applicable only for knowledge-based work or other kind of activities also?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the end of that.
Okay, so I was mentioning about like when you are interrupted while you are doing some work,
yeah.
And you mentioned that it will take 27 minutes to get back to the same speed which you were at before getting interrupted. Yeah. So is that applicable only for knowledge-based work or any other activity also?
I don't know. The study was done on knowledge-based work, but I guess, like, I have a few different hobbies myself as well. I make percussion instruments, and you would think that wasn't a knowledge-based job. You'd think you wouldn't be using your head much, but I do find if I'm carving away at the wood and somebody interrupts me, I do find nearly the same thing actually, that to get back into the whole mood, to, you know, the whole level of performance that you're at before the interruption, it takes a while. So I suspect it's nearly the same with all types of work. That's my opinion.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay. All right, folks, you have my email address, you have my phone number, so do get in touch if you wish. And thank you so much for your attention. I enjoyed it.